to the Cyberpath Chronicles YouTube channel. Very excited to launch this channel. I'm doing this because I've been in the industry for about 15 years now. Well, actually over. I've got a pretty decent amount of experience that I really want to share with everybody. That includes making a lot of mistakes, and I want to share that because I don't want you to make the mistakes that I've done. But I've also done quite a few good things as well. Almost innovative. Don't like that word, but it is what it is. So I hope people get a lot from this. That's the idea, at least, anyway. Anything from cyber incidents. I've dealt with a lot of cyber incidents, to the boring stuff, governance, risk and compliance. I mean, who likes compliance? Nobody. To procurement as well, because you've got to procure this stuff, guys. You've got to procure it, got to deal with vendors, got to deal with people as well, the human component of cyber. It's all very important. So in my first video, I thought what I'd do is just take you through kind of the GRC in its most simplistic terms, and how I've learned GRC over my career, but also how this might actually help you to land that cyber job, that first cyber job, or the first GRC cyber job, if you're in IT at the moment and you want to transition to cyber. Hopefully this will help. Well, so most people think that cyber is all technical, all coding, all hoodies and hackers, and it just isn't. I mean, there's a large portion of it is technical, and you have to have some technical knowledge to be in cyber. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you don't. You really do. You wouldn't. You'd want a doctor to understand medicine, wouldn't you? You know, a surgeon to know about surgery. So with cyber, you've got to know technical. But there is a large component of it that is paperwork. But it is exceptionally important because it is the process, ultimately, the GRC process, that gets all of the funding, basically. That's just the way it is. You can't point at ones and zeros and a suspected attack and say, give me money, I need $1 million of XDR because of attack, suspected attack, near miss, a breach. You can't do that. You have to prove it. You have to translate it as well. There's a translation aspect from technical to non-technical. And not just to non-technical, but into specific language that executives and others fully understand. So I'll quickly go through that in the first video. So I've been doing this for over 15 years. And I started my life out as an auditor, as an IT auditor, and a digital forensics investigator. So I have that kind of GRC background, but mixed with that technical input from a digital forensics background as well. So I've kind of trodden both paths, if you like. So hopefully what I'll just go through now will give you a bit of an understanding of GRC, specific to cyber, and hopefully it's going to help you land that first cyber job or cyber GRC job. So what is GRC? So let's break it down. Governance. What's governance? In its most simplest form, governance is meetings, but it's a bit more than that. It's how decisions are made, really, and who decides them. And this is really, really important because whenever you have a position on anything, be it a policy, standard, or anyone's made a decision somewhere, you need to understand where that decision should be made, or who makes that decision, or decisions along the way. A lot of the time there's multiple different people that need to approve, endorse, authorise along the way. And understanding that process and the key stakeholders involved in that is exceptionally important. So although it sounds like a very boring word, and it's a very boring process, governance is exceptionally important to understanding how to get things approved, no matter what it is, whether or not you're buying something, whether it's a policy, whether it's a process, doesn't matter. If you want it approved, you've got to understand the governance process. And that includes, your whole strategic vision as well. So setting your strategy and where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, that type of thing. Risk. Now, risk is a little easier to understand because we all know what risk is, right? We everyone deals with risk in their day-to-day lives. In a corporate organizational setting, it's a little different in that it's just assessed, identified, assessed, and then ultimately managed. But we all know what risk is, right? You can all point a risk out. You see something that looks risky, dodgy, like a pothole in the middle of the road, that's a risk, The difference being that in an organisation, obviously, you just got to assess how likely it's going to occur, how often it will occur, usually within a period of time, and how bad the impact is of that risk actually occurring, should it occur as well. That's the basic nuance of risk. And obviously, from a cyber standpoint, I'll take you through a little bit about what that actually means. And then compliance. Compliance is, you get a lot of people who love it, and then you get a lot of people who hate it. And compliance isn't everything. It's a lot. It really helps. It's a good guide, is the way I would personally take it, because it gives you an understanding of where you kind of want to be. Now, there are mandatory compliance, and then there's other compliance that you might need to abide by. I like to think that compliance is kind of, for the most part, the baseline from which you should build from, as opposed to aim to achieve, where you can possibly do it. Now, it's a very broad statement to make, depending upon which industry or sector you might be working in, but maturity ratings or maturity-based frameworks rather than compliance-based frameworks tend to be a bit easier to understand, and they also allow for a lot more improvement, and therefore you can actually show improvement a lot easier, because with compliance, you're either compliant or you're not, or you get partially compliant, and pretty much everyone's going to be partially compliant when you think about it, because it's really hard to potentially get to fully compliant. So maturity-based ones allow a broader scale of, we're doing something, which is not that we're not doing something, we are actually doing something, and here's a plan on how we're actually going to be better. So those are the kind of 3 elements of GRC. How do you manage those processes, and how do you get the best from them? Well, here's a really good example. So, a policy, right? Password policy. We all have passwords. No one likes passwords, do they? No, we don't. But we have to use them. It's just the way it is. You want to get a password policy approved, well, you got to write it, right? Got to write that. I can write a password policy, no problem. 12 characters, non-expiring, whatever it says, privileged accounts, net service accounts, MFA. I'm sure you can get a password policy. I'm sure you can Google it and write it. No problem, easy. All right. Who do I need to get on board with this password policy? Who's it going to affect? What systems is it going to affect? And herein lies the difficulty. But that's where the governance comes in. So you've got to know how it's going to be, the process it's got to follow to get approved. Is it a working group? Is it a committee? Is it a steering committee? Does your CEO sit on it? Does the CFO sit on it? Do you need to talk to them beforehand? Are they even technically literate? Would they understand it if you took them through it? Do you have to give analogies? That's the governance bit. The risk bit is, how is this managing the risk of password compromise, as an example, and documenting that risk, and then monitoring that risk, and documenting that you're monitoring the risk as well on an ongoing basis. Because when you get audited, and you will, you've got to show that you not only, okay, I got the password policy approved, but how are you actually monitoring compliance to the password policy? Well, you got to document it. You can't just see you doing it. You got to document it. You see you doing it. And when you document that password policy, are you documenting it because you need to be compliant to a specific framework? All right. Well, what does the framework actually say? Does it say you got to have 12 characters, got to have 14 characters, got to expire every year, got to do this? Well, make sure that it's in compliance with that framework. So the main thing that I wanted to go through from a cyber point of view is utilizing the GRC process for your benefit, not seeing it as a burden. There's a couple of steps that I want to kind of take you through, one more than two. And the first one is that you must understand your current level of cyber capability. Now, you can do that by understanding your compliance to a specific framework. I would suggest that a maturity-based framework is much better. And the reason for that is because that will genuinely actually show your capability rather than your compliance to a framework, whether or not you're just doing something or not, whether or not you have a policy or you do, or you have a process or you do. A maturity-based framework is going to show, are you actually using that process? Are you actually following that process and enforcing that policy? So the first thing that you got to do is do an assessment. Now, a compliance-based framework, that's going to tell you a lot. That's going to be really helpful. But a maturity-based framework, like a NIST 2.0 cybersecurity framework, that's going to really, really help you. So I would look that up. Now, you don't have to memorize it because it's always there. But just understanding the 6 domains, so you got your govern, identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover, and understand why they're in the order that they're in. So governance, govern. That's why they added it in 2.0. You've got to govern the whole aspect and risk of cybersecurity. Then you've got to identify the risk, right? And this is what we're doing right now. We're doing an assessment. You've got to understand it. Yeah. Then you've got to protect yourself, right? So you've got to prevent. Prevention is better than the cure. We all know this. So you got protection. Protect yourself before it actually can happen. If you can't prevent it, you can't protect yourself, then you've got to detect that it's going to happen, right? So you've got to have those detection capabilities in place. Respond. If you're not detecting it in as quick or in as best as you possibly can, you've got to be able to respond to it quickly. Sometimes you might find that you might have detection capability in place, but it wasn't as good as what you thought it was, so it compromises your response capability, and then recover. Unfortunately, if you're not able to respond properly and you are hit with a cyber incident, you've got to recover. So the reason for those 6 domains and in the way that they're in, the order in which they're in, is because that's the life cycle or ultimately the kill chain of a cyber incident. So just memorize those, understand the domains. Sorry, don't memorize them. You don't need to memorize them. Just understand them, understand why they're in there. And see if you can have a look at the individual areas. So you've got the subcategories and the categories within NIST as an example, and look at them and think, what would you actually need as evidence to prove that you are doing this, and how you would actually prove it on an ongoing basis as well. That's going to really, really help you in your first cyber GRC role. Really, really help you. So, on doing your first assessment against NIST or any other capability or maturity-based framework, that sets the stone, that sets that baseline for where you are right now, right? How good am I at cyber? And documenting that evidence and documenting your assessment and how you've done it, the people you've spoken to. That's the very first thing that you want to do. As part of that process, you want to document all the controls that you've got in place as well, and document the ones that aren't in place as well. Obviously, that makes sense to do so, but if you document the ones that aren't in place, obviously that's going to help you in relation to any kind of future roadmap that you might do along the way. And this is another really, really important piece. Document any assurance mechanisms that are currently in place as well. So that's anything that helps you prove that you're doing something, and ultimately assures you and anybody else that that a particular control is working and is in place. This can be a pen test report. It can be as technical as a pen test report. It can be your risk assessments that you've done. It could be risk registers that you have. It could be the working group meetings, steering committee meetings that you have, and the minutes of those meetings. It could be your daily checklist for your cyber ops as well. So checking your firewall logs, checking your EDR notifications. It can be, and how you document that you've checked them as well, and ticking them off. Not just having the list, but documenting that you've actually done it. So document all the assurance mechanisms that are exceptionally important. So once you've done your assessment, you now know where you're at, right? So this is telling you, I'm pretty good in this area, got bad practices in this area, no controls in this area, no assurance mechanisms in this area. So you obviously know where you're going wrong, essentially, and where your capability perhaps isn't as good as what you want it to be. So following that, what you need to do is understand why. Why is it like that? You need to understand the specific roadblocks as to why they are what they are. And it could be culture, it could be legacy systems, it could be lack of investment, it could be that nobody has understood the level of risk and that you've literally just been super lucky not to be hit in the past. It could be a multitude of things. The reason why that is really important, that why, is because it will answer a lot of questions that you will get asked in the future when you ask for money and funding to correct those errors, and to implement better capability and plug the control gap that you have at the moment. The ultimate goal after doing an assessment is to have an improvement plan or a roadmap of some description of how you're ultimately going to improve your level of cyber capability. And that'll be everything from documenting stuff right the way down to a technical implementation of a new firewall or an SSE or something like that, a new web proxy, whatever it might be. and how you're then going to not just implement it, but then prove that the implementation of that new initiative plugs that gap, and then how you're going to assure yourself that it has plugged that gap and provide that assurance back to whoever it was in the governance process that approved it. Provide them the assurance that, look, I came to you and I said there was a control gap here. I asked for money, you gave me the money. I said I would do this. I have done it. Here's proof of how I've done it, independently if you can get it. But if not, doesn't matter. And here's how I'm assuring myself and you on an ongoing basis that that control is in place and is working effectively, and that ultimately we're enforcing it. That is a really, really key bit. So in a few future videos, I'll go through how I've done it, some anonymized examples in relation to roadmaps and improvements. If anyone has any topics that you want me to talk about from a cyber perspective, and I can talk about them, I absolutely will. One of the things that I'll definitely be talking about is some funny anecdotes from various incidents, anonymized, of course, because I have many, and I know a lot of people who've told me many as well. So if you want to hear those, I'll definitely be doing a video on that. And if any of you have any questions or topics that you want me to cover, let me know. I'll be more than happy to cover them. See you on the next video.